Welcome to Cornstars, a Herpetoculture Network show with your hosts Justin Smith and Joe Phelan.
We go. This is once again another show. This is part of the Herpetoculture Network. Very excited to announce that this is the first episode of Cornstars, which is going to be hosted by me, Justin Smith of Palmetto Coast Exotics, and Mr. Joe Phelan of Port City Pets. Do you say pets or pet?
Pet, singular. You know what's weird, man? I didn't really get. I kind of was thinking of Pawn Stars this whole time when you said Corn Stars. Well, I don't know what angle you were going for, but
I just thought it was punny.
It definitely is. I'm an idiot.
And then I like with the intro and stuff that I made, everyone was like, "Oh my god, you need to do like smooth jazz or something to sort of fit the thing." I'm like, I ain't trying to go too hard into that theme like that.
Is that our lane now?
I hope not. I don't want it to be. It's like,
did you do an intro? Did I not hear an intro?
I made one. Yeah, I made one today. And I went and found a like AI voice generator. You'll see. I'll have to show it to you.
Is it good that other people have heard what the show I'm on sounds like before I have?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, it was just our group that I sent the little like video clip of me playing it on my computer earlier, so it wasn't like clear audio. It was just,
Oh, I legit missed it.
Teaser,
I had a super busy day, so
yeah, I feel you. So yeah, this is episode 1. This is not going to be a weekly show. We're planning maybe 1-2 episodes a month. So it's going to be me and Joe, and then I'm going to see if I can get Chris Painshab in here, so we can have some people on and talk about certain lines and morphs and stuff like that, peppered throughout. But given that, I've recently sort of fallen back in love with corns, at least on a serious level, it's like, why not? There's plenty of stuff to talk about. I don't think there's really a corn snake show around anymore. I know Donovan Winterberg had his, some years ago and got the gears turning. And I was like, we could do something simple, something. Like
even then, we're talking about 4 episodes or so, maybe 4 to 6 episodes that I've listened to over and over again. But yeah, so there's no legitimate corn snake show that was long lasting, although that was a great show while it was on. And I feel like I need to mention the fact, kind of bookend. Obviously, you guys know me from the Ground Up, a podcast that I used to have, and it's something in which I decided to kind of close the chapter on and obviously give the feed to Dominique. So we're going to post this on Dominique's feed as well as mine. If you guys aren't following her, it's the Modern Medusa podcast. So go check out her stuff. She does kind of a female focused podcast, and she does it on, what the feed was for From the Ground Up, because I didn't want to just stop that show and not give anyone content, as well as not kind of pass the torch to someone to do something different. So I felt that my podcast was running out of pretty much like differentiation with all the other podcasts that were coming out, and so many podcasts, and it's like just too redundant. And I felt like Dom was taking the podcast in a very different direction, which I thought was really interesting. And then if you guys don't know, like between all the THP guys and me and Dom, I mean, we're all just really in a big circle of friends. So it's not anything weird like that I'm over here or anything. It's just all of our friends like to make podcasts and do content and stuff like that. So I would love it if first the people who are on my old feed come and subscribe to the Herpetoculture podcast feed, as well as go the other way and check out the Modern Medusa podcast. So we can all help each other get more snake content out there. And if you guys like listening to them, I mean, you guys are the ones who fuel us to keep on doing it. So.
Yeah. It's so like Burke and the NPR guys, like Burke has it set up to where each individual show has its own RSS feed, and so I'm curious talking about that. But my biggest concern is that he's going to show me how it's done, and then I have to re-upload the other 200 plus episodes of THN shows to that new thing. And so if that's the case, I'm probably just going to keep it as is, because I think it would be nice to sort of be able to, if people want just Snakes and Stogies or just THP or just this or Chondrocast, whatever, they can just go find those feeds itself instead of having to scroll through all the other stuff. But at the same time, I mean, people might see something, we have one guest on, they see above that on another show we had someone else on that they might be interested in. So still kind of sort of trying to navigate that. And there's something to be said for both options, I guess. But
yeah, the question there is, are you paying monthly for each RSS feed? But
right.
I mean,
which
other
I'm
stuff that we don't need to
yeah.
get into for people listening.
That's the reason I brought the Chondrocast into this RSS feed to begin with, because I was paying, another monthly subscription just to have those episodes there, and I wasn't really adding anything to it. So I was like, why am I paying for this to just sit there when it could just sit there on the other feed?
Yeah, so if you want us to break up the feeds, onlyfans.com/cornstars. Nudity is back. So go hit us up. Literally.
Promise this is not an like adult show or anything like that. It's just,
it will probably be a lot more of the opposite, to be honest, because it will be a real deep dive on how to keep these animals, why we love them, different things in which I'm hoping that we can make kind of like an audio handbook of corn snakes, and whether that be history, whether that be keeping, breeding, mutations, and maybe even like pricing your corn snakes, different things like that may get into the nitty gritty. I think there's enough information out there about the history of the mutations, but there's no one aggregating it all and putting it into an audio format so that people don't have to go open a book. I know our classic thing, the reptile hobby's like, go get a book, go read a book, but not everyone's willing to do that. And I understand, because listening to something on audio, if I have the chance to get an audio book over a physical book, I typically do that. I mean, I think that's why I do podcasts, is because that's actually what works for me. Listening to audio is how I actually learn best. Books, I kind of read the same sentence over and over again like a doof. So
as you're falling asleep just before you drop it on your face.
Yeah, so it's like I do read books, but then again, honestly, it's a lot easier to digest in podcasts, and I understand that. So I'd like to kind of have a place where someone can really get the nitty gritty, and then you and Chris can kind of talk to the other personalities in the corn snake world.
We have so many friends that are in them. Me and Chris talk daily. He's in our little group. I consider Chris, one of my probably best friends in the hobby, and just in life in general, because he's such a good guy. But he's doing so much cool stuff. He knows plenty of other people in corns that are doing really cool stuff. So I'm just sort of, I am playing catch up in corns. Like I've been out of the loop a really long time. Like for the last couple of years, I've kept some, but they were stuff that I collected from my area and raised up, as younger snakes. So as far as morphs and stuff go, like I'm so out of the loop, and it's changed so much since I was actually keeping up with it last, which was, I don't know how many years ago. So this will be good for me, because I'm like I said, I'm going to be learning as I go, kind of thing, in terms of what's what, how stuff works, this, that, and the other. And
and I guess I should give kind of my history of corn snakes and how I got into it. So I first started keeping corn snakes in kindergarten, actually, is when I got my first corn snake, brought my first corn snake into show and tell. I was lucky enough to have my parents who were cool with the snakes. My dad in particular kept snakes. So having a corn snake was a great first pet for me as far as that goes, and bringing them into school and stuff like that, probably freaking out kids. I don't really remember. But having a little critter keeper and all that good stuff. And throughout the years, I had plenty of them. By the time I was in middle school, I got this particular corn snake named Tony. And he's one that I had the longest. He actually just passed away last year, bringing him to about 17 years old.
Wow.
Which honestly is a mediocre lifespan. I mean, it's more than most of them in captivity, but I've heard of ones that go 30 years. So I always think it's, what could I have done to extend that life even further? And I know that I was probably not the most attentive in the high school years when you're out doing other things, and the college years as well. So there's a lot of things that once I got back down into reptiles, once I got out of college and started keeping again privately by myself in my own home, I was much more attentive, really got into the different husbandry, the different mutations of corn snakes. The first one I bred, I believe, was in 2012. So I'm coming up on 9 years of breeding corn snakes, and I've pretty much been breeding corn snakes every year, except this one. I actually took a year off, but every year since then, the bulk of my production was probably the 2020 season, in which I produced about 250 corn snakes. So I mean, that's small for a lot of people out there, but for me, for one human, it was pretty overwhelming. But I can at least say that I've been doing it long enough to know the basics of what I'm talking about, or at least have resources in which to kind of gain all that knowledge if I don't have it myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned your dad sort of being into it too, because that's more or less a similar situation with mine. Is I was breeding corns with my dad back in 2000 to 2004, 2003. So that was when I was reading Kathy Love's Corn Snake Manual cover to cover constantly, and it's funny flipping through that now and just seeing just how much things have it's almost exponential at how many new mutations and combinations there are now. It's unbelievable. But corns have always had sort of a, since my young or older childhood, I guess, being 10 to 13-ish, corns have always had a special place for me. And there's sort of a nostalgia factor with them now. And it's just, they're just fun snakes.
Yeah. And I think that even if people are listening to this and they're kind of the rare snake guys, the big python guys, even if you're coming from it from that angle, if you have kids, even if you don't have kids, I mean, it can be such a low maintenance, fun thing to do. And then it can get, your kids into reptiles. It can get them to just kind of be more attentive about different I think it's a sense of, I guess, responsibility that you can build with a kid, in which there's very little that you can severely mess up.
Yeah.
But just enough where like they can show some responsibility and see something through, all the way from, brumation is kind of a weird concept, and bringing them up from brumation, the feeding, the shedding, just paying attention to all those factors. And ultimately, if you do it right, getting eggs and then hatching babies and then getting the baby started. It's a whole process in which isn't really difficult, but then again, it would be a whole lot of fun to do with a kid.
Yeah, I need to find it. I have a stack of old pictures, and one of them is me. So my dad, at one point in our garage, we had a separate garage at the time, a pretty decent sized one. He had built a little room in the corner, and that was like the snake room, and that's where he ran like some heaters and stuff. And there's a picture of me hovered over a tank, just watching like I was literally watching a female pop out eggs, and it was I don't even know how long I sat there, but it was just the coolest thing at the time. And then seeing them hatching, and like the smell of the vermiculite and I don't know. Like I said, it brings back a lot for me. And I mean, I completely agree on the pet aspect. It's funny because Matt Most, I think, teaches his daughter genetics, because they both breed, like he breeds black rats with her and some corn snakes and stuff to show her genetics and teach her these things, which I think is awesome, because that's like, I mean, you don't get any better, hands-on experience than that.
Yeah, I think you can kind of say, and that's why it's tough. We see it in Facebook groups all the time, right? People know a lot of things in books. People know a lot of things from videos, but doing it hands-on or seeing it kind of play out right in front of you, whether it be the genetics, whether it be, raising a baby from a hatchling to an adult, and then doing that on a larger scale, you learn even more. You learn the variation of each animal and how different animals can act different ways. Different animals are triggered by certain things in different ways, whether it be feeding, whether it be defensive nature. They're so similar in husbandry, but so different in personality. And I see that very much in particular with corns. And I think a lot of that has to do with the ranges you find them in. how the different mutations play. I think we may downplay I don't know if we could say it's the lineage of the animals that are passing down the behaviors, or maybe it's where that animal was collected.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a diffused corn, they could be from the Florida Keys, and they can be a little bit more round in shape, and they can be a little bit more flighty, at least in my experience. And then also they seemingly want to feed on lizards as babies. They're a little bit harder to get feeding, and that's because of where they're from, what their body shape is like, kind of what they're used to in their environment, even though we've been breeding them for decades and decades. It really, you still don't get that out of the animal. You don't get those behaviors out of the animal, whether that's genes or just where they're from. Well, I guess it would be genes, anything expressed.
Yeah, it'd be almost, I won't say ancestral because I think that's a bit of a stretch, but definitely that football keeps getting passed, down the line.
Yeah, and then you're seeing a lot of the mutations started off actually in South Carolina, North Carolina, or you have some aneries in Devil's Garden in Florida that you can find in the wild right now. So these animals come from, range from New Jersey to the Florida Keys, and they're different colorations.
Mm-hmm.
They're different body shapes, which have evolved over time by whether the prey availability or what the area is like. So there's really variation within the variation, just because of the natural variance of the species. So that's why I find it really exciting to talk about. I find it really exciting to work with different animals, and really exciting to have a group of individuals in which are different.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you've had Okeetees tend to be a little bit more bitey.
Yeah. Mine are, especially the babies I just recently hatched, because going back to the locality thing, that's my original interest in corns. Morphs are awesome too, but my main focus is, I'll back up a little bit, but I'm in prime world-class corn territory. I'm in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is maybe 15-20 minutes from Jasper County, and where the old Okeetee Hunt Club used to be way back in the day. And Jasper County is famous for just those highlighter orange corns. Some of the best in the world, in my opinion. I'm biased because I'm a South Carolinian born and bred, and I take pride in our corns that we have here. So my thing is, we have so many barrier islands down here where I live, and so you'll get different populations of corns, and there'll be little differences. And then I have some that even come from within 200 yards of each other that look completely different. And so I hatched out a clutch this year, and it was from Ladies Island, which is the island I live on. I'm literally right on the water, around the corner from my house, over the street. There's the marsh. So it's about as coastal as a town can get. But like I said, tons of islands, big and small, that all sort of chain their way up the coast and stuff. And I'm in the very bottom corner, almost at the Georgia border. So we have some of the best looking corns, in my opinion. And I can attest that the Okeetees definitely seem to be pretty spicy. At least the F1s that I have that I just hatched are pretty pugnacious.
Yeah, that also helps too, being a little bit closer to nature as far as generations.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we may take it for granted your A-male that's been bred since the 70s.
Yeah.
Obviously, domestication's a stretch, but then again, we kind of self-select for, and I know back in the day they were even meticulously selecting for temperament, selectively breeding for size, for these different things that now I feel like we're just kind of breeding for coloration, and then therefore, it doesn't matter how it acts, what it's like. But back in the day, they were really paying attention to every single factor.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have some things like A-males and aneries that can really come out of the egg completely chill, eating, pinkies from day one, that are really amazing animals. And then also you can probably get random ones from your clutch that will be nice. That will be that one super laid back animal in which, if you're going back to, the 1970s, you may have kept that one back, and then next clutch there's another calm one, and then you keep those back. And Yeah, I mean, they've been selective bred every which way, and they are the animal that started basically the morph craze in reptiles.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, just with ball pythons too, and corn snakes, and I guess really anything that has a morph, but like a single albino is kind of the catalyst for just an absolute explosion of other things in the following decades. Like, it's just insane that it can start with one and then through, I guess, more or less what I would call sort of crowdsourcing, it just exponential. Like I said, it just explodes into infinite combinations and colors and patterns.
Well, yeah, because once you start looking for these differences, they start kind of popping up, especially when you have a native species here. You have so many people across the country, and back in the day, it was more, herp clubs and stuff like that, in which it was just kind of word of mouth, in which someone may have gotten a postcard of a price list from Kathy Love, or maybe I forget exactly. I'll go back and we'll have a whole thing on this. But Dr. Bechtel was is the godfather of corn snakes. He's the one who got the first albino, which I believe was found in South Carolina. I believe he was in North Carolina at the time. Don't quote me on this. I'll do a fully researched episode on all of this. But, it really started with one person. And then you have the next generation, which would be Kathy Love, who really blew it up as far as, she was sending out price lists in the mail. There was color photos. She made books. And then you talk about the dawn of the forum era. And then you have Kathy Love still out there. And then you have Don Soderberg. And then now, I mean, you have Travis Whistler's taking a lot of Don's stuff, as well as Steve Roylands. And there's some people that just, the torch gets passed on and on and on with every generation, in which gets crazier and crazier and beyond your imagination every single generation that it happens, just from one enthused person to the next. And it's really just one or two individuals that really fuel, this whole thing, which is quite incredible. Obviously, there's probably, 20 giant players and stuff like that. And then you have people, since the pet market is so big, I mean, you have people producing, tens and thousands, for the big box pet stores, because I know what we like about corn snakes is what makes them, the best pet snake, at least in my opinion, for anyone. And so I guess I wanted to go over a little bit of what we like about this species in particular. So if someone just thinks that it's like a kid's corn snake, a starter animal, I understand where you're coming from. And we have to be frank that like that makes it the best pet snake, but it also makes it like the best pet snake for anyone. So I don't see why that makes it just exclusively kid.
That's a very big part of why I love them so much, is just the simplicity. When you deal with baby Alterna and you deal with baby Chondros and you deal with other species that require, more attention to detail, that are considerably more headache inducing, it's really nice to just have a species that you can just, you can just enjoy it. Like, not that I don't enjoy the other stuff or haven't enjoyed the other stuff, but to not have to worry like, man, I love these Alterna, but I'm going to have to spend, 2 hours on Saturday trying to get them all to eat. And I got to hunt down a fence lizard or something for scenting and having to worry about that kind of stuff. Like with these, it's like, it's just, they're corn snakes. It's the simplicity is a big part of the draw, I think.
Yeah. And I think that definitely starts with just in general, the size of the animal. I mean, you're looking at something where most individuals are from 3 to 5 feet. And then even at that 3 to 5 feet, you're looking at like a roll of quarters in width. And that's something in which benefits the keeper, as far as, you can keep quite a few of them. You can keep them in a 3-foot enclosure. You can keep them in a 30-gallon tank, 40-gallon long, whatever you would like. And also it's an animal in which you can keep it in big enclosure. People have kept them in tubs forever. And if you're keeping a few of them, I don't see why you would keep them that way. Especially because the niche that we're talking about that they inhabitate. So like, or inhabit, and I don't know how they inhabit. I'm making up my own
Inhabitate.
stuff. So if you put things in the enclosure, they're going to climb. These are animals that are, mostly semi-arboreal pretty much in nature. As adults, they're going to definitely climb less, but you could still definitely find an adult in a tree. I think it was very commonplace for kind of the old school herpers to say, put them in tubs. As adults, none of these things climb. And I've seen so many pictures of in situ corn snakes in the wild in a tree.
Yep.
That there's just no possible.
There's still a rat snake.
The truth. Yes, and they're robbing birds' nests all the time. That's actually a big staple of what they're eating in the wild. So I think that, I mean, if you have a few of them, set them up in a cool enclosure. Mine even, I have the brain in which has seen so many reptile shows, probably been handled by like thousands of kids. He's in an enclosure. He's in the exoskeleton from Focus Cubed, where the front's glass, the sides are glass, the back's glass, and the top's glass. And
so it's just like a frame.
Exoskeleton. Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of people associated that with stress of the animal. But this is an animal who likes to come out and like see what's going on. He likes to see what I'm doing. It's a much more interactive experience than you would ever imagine with a snake, right? And I think that corn snakes have that personality to them. I think that that's pretty unique of the corn snake, although I've seen, other people with pythons. I've had carpet pythons that come out to check out what's going on in the room when you're in the room and stuff like that. So I think it kind of benefits us if you can do it that way. But also if you have 100 snakes, having one in a tub, I mean, you're feeding it, you're keeping it correctly. I can't scoff at that because I do that as well.
Yeah, that's an entirely other conversation in itself. But I completely agree. I mean, mine are for the most part pretty mellow. Of course, giving that I have some wild caught stuff that is obviously going to be a little more high strung and will probably never fully chill out and always be a little on the spazzy side. Most of my morph stuff is also just as mellow and enjoyable, and that's why the reason I'm getting so hard into them again now is just because I've never been big on morphs, so I've never been a big morph guy in anything really. So I've never really, I guess, gotten the mass appeal that morphs have across the board in any species. But now that I've gotten some stuff from JT and I actually got a couple snakes from Weisler. He was our next door neighbor at Daytona. He was the next table next to us, which was dangerous. And we were right across from Lee Abbott, which is another double whammy of I'm going to be broke real quick. But just seeing all the combinations you have now, and it's that potential of, you can do whatever you want. Like you have so many options now that like if it's pattern specific that you're kind of trying to go for, you got options. If it's color specific, you got options. If it's both, you got options. And it's that sort of fantasy of possibility. That's what's really caught my attention with it. And it's like, man, I wonder what would happen if I paired this with this. And, what if I doubled that back and did something else down the line? And like, you just don't know. And maybe that's the reason I like chondros a lot too, is like that unknown factor of you have no idea what you're going to get. When you get a baby, you're not going to know what it's going to look like as an adult, and no one can really tell you what it will look like as an adult. And that sort of level playing field for me is a big draw. So
yeah, and there's a level playing field in a lot of different ways. So you're looking at probably, 85% of all the color options and pattern options are within $100 range. And then you're probably talking 95% are in the $200 range. And then all you really have after that is scaleless and palmetto that are going to be more expensive. And yeah, there's going to be the slight exceptions and stuff like that with different combinations that get a little bit more pricey. But ultimately, you can have a world-class collection in which no animals are over like $500. And that just makes it so palpable for anyone, in which I know when I got into a big thing about like that's not talked about enough is that when I got into corn snakes, I was 21 years old. I didn't have any money. I didn't really have any excess money to spend on animals. And I really built up very slowly and had, 2 clutches, then had 5 clutches, then had 10 clutches, then had 20 clutches. So like this just year after year built up until I was like, I could house and feed and keep up with hundreds of animals and not have it come out of my pocket as a broke 20-something.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, if you're patient, have that snowball into a little bit of freedom with what you want to do with your collection. And really, it doesn't take a big investment from your uncle or anything like that. Will you get rich? Probably not. And I know that that's famous to say in snakes, like, come in with $1 million, or the only way to make $1 million is to start with 2, which really isn't true for everything and a lot of things. But
I think it is if you're just kind of aimlessly doing things. If you have like a projected plan, like you have a long-term goal with certain animals and you can like you have that long range vision, I think then that's a different story. But to just like buy random stuff and then put random stuff together and expect it to fly is, that's a good way to either break even or be in the red.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, staying focused and stuff like that, you can definitely build that snowball effect. And usually we're a little bit too into it and we kind of spend all of our money on different species and different things and we never really get in the green because we're too obsessed with it. But none of that matters. All I'm saying is that it's accessible to everyone. This isn't the Sanzinia, in which, it's not the Bolins. It's not the big species in which is going to not only get the price tag, but is going to be more difficult and all that good stuff. And no one's going to pat you on the back for breeding corn snakes. But if that's what you're in snakes for, then interesting choice.
I don't really, as far as the whole, like it being a quote unquote kid snake, I don't really necessarily think that's the case. Cause I think I know more people that are, our age that are breeding corns, JT's, he's been freaking killing it. And it's only getting better. Like Chris, he bred a ton of corns this year. He's older than both of us, and he's breeding them. Like, I don't necessarily agree that it's the kid snake. Like, is it a good snake for kids? Absolutely. But to say that it's like just write it off as a kid snake, I think is just.
And why aren't we
not terribly accurate?
Why aren't we kind of cheerleading those that are producing these snakes? Because we like to put on a pedestal the person who has this new morph of retic when he's producing 50 animals out of an egg that are going to get,
who knows? Yeah, they're going to disappear into the void as well,
And I never see adult retics. That's weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So, why don't we say, this is actually a responsible way to do this. There's a demand here because it's the best first pet snake, and I know a lot of people are going to say ball python, and I don't completely disagree.
Yeah, I really don't.
Whatever.
I think corns are it, man. They're going to get my vote.
And I
those
think
are Brettles pythons if people are willing to go a little bigger.
I think if they came out a yearling size, I would say 100% the most perfect, pet snake. Because they come out so small, I've seen children have problems handling them and stuff like that, or having them
fat finger them.
Yeah, you got to
be gentle, and they're like just swatting it, And...
Oh yeah, and that's the cool thing about like the brain and stuff. Honestly, we've had some kids, even though their parents are right there, they're little jerks and done some weird things, but it's not like the snake's ever going to react in any negative way, So that's really the great thing. The temperament just seems so pliable in comparison to some animals that I've worked with, as far as, you may have bitey babies. Not only do they tame out over time, but they actually tame out with handling.
Mm-hmm.
So
that and even the color shift. having a kid be able to see, like, as it progresses, over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years, seeing it go from A to B, is a really cool experience too, I think.
Yeah. So what Justin's getting at is like the ontogenetic color change that happens from the baby to adult. And corn snakes, for the most part, you're going to see a saturation. Obviously, it's going to depend on morph. Things like reds are going to enhance with age. Reds and yellows typically enhance with age, with the yellows coming mostly kind of the neck area. For some animals, it even comes up into the face and throughout the body. So that's something that I find really cool, that you never know, how much yellow the animal is going to have in it. You never know if your snow is going to mature into a more pink animal or stay about the same that it was hatched at. A lot of your aneries are going to go the opposite way, unfortunately. They're going to kind of fade out over time. I've had some projects that do the opposite, which is really interesting, which is another whole other gene that I don't think we've really teased out exactly. And basically, these animals are just going to be different from when they're babies, from when they're adults. And it's just awesome to see. And in a clutch, you're going to see animals start different colors, and you're going to get the occasional zigzag patterned one, probably incubation spike, something like that. There's even some line bred things out there as far as that pattern goes too.
Yeah, there's definitely no shortage of choices, and there's something for everyone, which is the other part of it that I think is nice. Like, if you want something that's more of like that nice deep oak, but still has stripes, then you have your Okatee stripes. You got the Tesseras, which I'm a huge Tessera fan. I love the look of that phenotype, and so that's a big part of my focus with the morph stuff that I have currently. I mean, you took the year off, so are you planning to do something in spring?
So probably not this spring, because I kept back very particular projects that I really picked the best of the best that I've ever bred that are unique to me. So I did breed some amazing honeys over the years. I bred some great Okatees over the years. But I have a couple projects that are very uniquely mine that I don't think anyone really has a beat on. And I don't think anyone really knows exactly what it is. And I don't think I really know exactly what it is. But it's really cool to me, at least, for someone who's very particular about corn snakes. So I have a 2-year-old animal, 2 yearlings, and 1 adult corn snake. And that's pretty much all the corn snakes I have right now. But it's one very particular project in which I'm just going to see through for fun, just because I'm running out of time as I get old and tired.
The bedtime gets earlier by the year.
Yeah, it's like I guess I had to come to the crossroads of stop playing with snakes in my basement, and kind of figure out how to be like a fully functioning human being. So I'm still working.
It's overrated.
Yeah.
It's extremely overrated.
Yeah, I'm still still the reptile guy, in which is I think what I'll be for life.
I think everyone sort of goes through phases in that regard. I mean, you mentioned earlier, like high school and college, you kind of had these, I won't necessarily say falling out, but a period where it just wasn't the focus. And I certainly had that period. There was a point in time, I don't know if it was during college or in high school, but I wasn't the greatest of keepers and wasn't really tending to my stuff the way I should have, and eventually just got rid of everything except for, I think, 1 tarantula that I had at the time. And then I focused on inverts for a while before getting into cresteds, and then it went back to snakes. And it's always evolving. And I think it's just like with life in general. There's ebbs and flows to things, and I think we naturally take those sort of that time off from our main passions onto other stuff. For me, I'm a musician, so I like music a lot, and so there have been times where it's like I'm hyper focused on drums for a little while and doing that kind of thing, and then it's like go back to snakes. I think your brain naturally does that just to kind of take a break, a short sort of mental vacation from it to come back.
Yeah, and it's really tough with snakes. Well, snakes are a little bit easier than other animals, but there's really not many breaks you could take. Things need to be tended to, things need to be fed, things need to be cleaned. and that's just what we do. So what we do is reduce our numbers, maybe, so where it's, at least what I've done, to where it is more of a hobby again, and I can keep at a high level. I was trying to keep at a high level with 300 animals, which was super, super time consuming. That's basically a full-time job if you try really hard. I mean, some people can do it with thousands of animals, but you may be keeping on newspaper or something in all tubs, and I understand why you would do that. But keeping at a high level, you know, I have like altogether 6 animals and then a rhino. Well, that's not true. I forgot I have like 6 geckos too. I have probably 13 animals and a rhino iguana, which is like just a house cat. So it's totally
cool.
No, it is the coolest. So yeah, keeping it real small with what I got going on. What do you have as far as projects?
So I'm currently at, I think, around 60 animals, give or take. And even that's kind of getting to the point. I mean, there's everything's still getting taken care of, but it's definitely between the magazine, the podcasts, work. I work like 50 plus hours a week, which I do a lot of magazine stuff at work because that's something fortunately I can do while I'm there. But it's still a lot of work. And so coming home, I work, usually 10 to 8, 10 to 9, depending on the day. And so unfortunately, if I have to get stuff done, it's either before or after. And a lot of times it's after. And then, I have a wife and child that I also have to make sure I allot time to and things like that. So it definitely gets tough. And I don't think I could do it with 300 animals. It definitely would be a tough thing. So I think kind of where I'm at now, I'm pretty happy with. Definitely, as far as chondros go, I'm pretty much content with what I have. I have no plans on bringing anything else in there. But corn wise, I mean, I got honey has definitely caught my eye. That's something I really want to pursue more. So I have a honey tester from JT at Silent Hill Reptiles. That's absolutely out of this world. Picked up a honey motley at Daytona for him to pair down the road, and that I'm also very excited about. But like I said, I'm a big tester guy, so I've got some other tester stuff. Got a pair from Lee Abbott of Tessera's Het Candy Cane and Honey Motley. I got a Candy Cane Tessera from Weisler at his table at Daytona. I got another Anery. I think she's a Het Hypo from JT as well. I got a male Het Sunkissed that I hopefully will tie into some of the locality stuff. And that was originally my goal. Was I have my locality animals, I want to tie some of the morph stuff into those, but also still do locality stuff. So sort of keeping the focus on my local animals, but then still sort of tinkering around and seeing what that natural blood will do with some of the genetics and things like that. So that's sort of the big focus. But locality stuff, especially from my areas, is the main drive for me currently. The morphs are more of just a sort of a fun little side piece.
And that's more of a new thing that you've seen in the corn hobby, is taking that natural variation that I was kind of talking about in the beginning from the different ranges that they exist in the wild. You're going to see different colors and putting those into the genetic mutations and seeing how those play off each other. So when I was working with honeys, I really used the old school stuff that derived from, at least where I got it, was Don Soderbergh, and very yellow, had some black on it, stuff like that. And now you're seeing a lot of the Miami honey crosses, in which I believe derived originally from Walter Smith Captive Creations. And that's when we started seeing like these weird sunspotty gray and yellow things, which is like, what the hell? How did that happen? And really one of the more stunning corn snakes you could see in the hobby. And I think that that's just so creative to even think of that, even though now that it's done, you can recreate that over and over and over again. And now there's even more color options going on. Right. But that kind of, every once in a while, something comes around that kind of opens a door. And I feel like that's opening a door in the corn snake game.
Well, it definitely seems like Sunkissed is kind of, I don't know how long that's been sort of the thing, but it seems like that's the thing now. And I've been watching a lot of Sarah Moore's at Sarah's Snake Shop. She, talked about Sunkissed in one of her videos because she does morph deep dives, which are awesome. I highly suggest everyone go check them out. And she talks about how Sunkissed is kind of like the curveball in things, and that really sort of mixes things up. It's sort of the genetic blender of sorts, which I like because it's very similar to sort of Biocs and Chondros. You throw Bioc in a designer Chondro stuff, and it really does it amplifies things a lot. It does some really funky stuff. So that sort of throwing that wrench into those gears, I really like the idea of that. And the Cinder stuff and Peppermint I really like a lot too. But Tessera, anything I'm a sucker for.
Yeah, so that was definitely one of my big focuses the whole time, was definitely doing Tessera stuff. All the stuff that I was telling you about that I held back, all of it's Tessera. So it's a direction that I've always loved. I just love the pattern of it. And even that has, maybe we can get into the shady past of the Tessera gene one day, but that has a whole backstory that's really, really interesting, and which is clouded with a whole bunch of doubt in different ways. I think that's what's fun about all this reptile stuff. And probably for most hobbies, the deeper you look, kind of, you can get particular little through stories, and it goes through particular players' hands at the same time.
Telephone game, but on a massive level.
Yeah. And it's funny because no one's really keeping records. It's all verbal. One guy thinks it's this, thinks it's that. And then you have different personalities at play in which may not like each other or something like that. So of course someone's going to throw some doubt into someone.
A lot of hearsay that gets turned into fact, and
and all of a sudden, where does Tessera have king snake in it or not? And I'm not even sure. I mean, I don't even put it past there, because I think it derives off of a forum in which some of these things end up in random people's hands that have no idea what they're looking at. And then you have to play, is this something new? Is this a weird combination that someone just at some point, people were just, I don't know if you remember, kind of when I first got started into doing this very seriously, we're probably talking like 2011, 2012, when Kevin McCurley was just like putting everything together. He was making Bat Eaters. He was making, I see all this, putting all those pythons together. And it's like, he wasn't the first one to be making different hybrids and just having fun with it. That happened all the time. And that guy wholesaled to someone else. And I think that's everyone's fear when people do that, and they think that's a bad thing. But also, like, damn, does that put some fun and mystery in it? Because ultimately,
adds to the lore.
Yeah, it's not the biggest deal in the world. You have this captive snake. Oh no, I don't know what's in it. Who gives a shit? It's not really going anywhere. Don't breed it to like your trophy, Lee Abbott Okatee or something. Okay, that's fine. But like, you have something that's really cool, and we can play he said, she said all day, and we can kind of try to come to a conclusion on what it is. But at the end of the day, there's always a question mark.
There's always going to be that little bit of doubt,
And why are
that tiny shred? It's always going to exist.
Why do my Tesseras bite each other when they breed? I don't know. They're probably.
Do they really?
Yeah. They're. I have some pictures of them. They bite the neck of the females to latch on like a king snake would. So that's the type of thing that you need a lot of animals to see things like that, because I've bred them multiple times, and over say 5 years, those pairs, and I've seen this happen 2 or 3 times, which I just think is really interesting behavior, especially something that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, well, in the context, especially if you're breeding other stuff and you're not seeing that happen either at all or nearly as much, then it's definitely it stands out a little more.
Yeah, and I think that, and then you'll have the old school guy who's like, my corns have never done that, and I've never had Tessera in my stuff, and then you have some other guy who's had it happen before in his collection, and then that just, I think a lot of times we think it's like Facebook drama and stuff like that, but also people are kind of standing up for their own anecdotal experiences. And being like, well, this is what happens in my collection, and then something else happens in someone else's collection, and then it's like, you're wrong because that's what happens here, but you're wrong because this is what happens over here. But like, maybe you're both wrong, right? Whatever the hell. This stuff isn't a tried and true science to the fact that we haven't kept all the data, we haven't kept all the records and stuff like that, and that's what that room for error, I think, is kind of fun if you don't take it too seriously.
Yeah,
like just chill out. And with Corn Snake, it's easy to just chill out.
Yeah, I think that's another big part of why I like it so much is, there's not super exclusive genes and stuff that only 5 people have. It's fairly open source to, just about everybody. It's just a matter of how much are you willing to put into it financially. And, I like that there's not like, I heard of this secret morph that this one person has, that I don't know what it looks like, but I've been, someone described it to me and it sounds like something super unique, but it'll never see the light of day. I don't see that with corns, but it may exist. I don't know, but.
And then you're looking at, say, if you take the mentality of the corn snake and apply it to carpet pythons, then your hypo bredli bred with your Darwin albino makes an amazing looking snake. But the carpet community will not accept it. Blasphemy. But if you do
over in Australia, they just don't care because they got what they got. Same. I think that's why it's the way it is here. Yeah.
Yeah. Natives. And we can always get more. I guess maybe it's just the availability of blood. But then again, let's be honest, there's pure quotes, carpet pythons everywhere. You can find your own stuff. And who gives a shit? Guys, I'm sorry. You're not an AZA accredited facility. You're not preserving anything worth preserving. That's so fucked up to say. But you're not preserving anything worth preserving. You're doing it for the hobby for a bunch of other dudes in their basements. But ultimately, you're not